has been a long road, as I understand it. Just to get to this point, for the visitor center took well over 2 decades, and COVID played a role and delayed the installation of the exhibits by well over a year. Fortunately, it's all come together in time to initiate our centennial year, and in this year we look forward to many celebrations, key milestones, a chance to reflect on our past, and look forward to the next 100 years at Timpanogos Cave National Monument. Next, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for the day, Jim Ireland. In 1991, as most of you know, the existing visitor center burned down, and staff dealt with a variety of hardships, including working in a temporary double wide. It's a joke in the government, there's no such thing as temporary. And many superintendents and countless staff have worked since that time to realize this vision. Jim Ireland spent the last decade helping to finally get this off the ground and finally built. Jim has worked at a variety of National Park Service units in many different roles, from fees to interpretation, law enforcement. He served as the Utah state representative for the National Park Service. He has served on the staff of the House Natural Resources Subcommittee on Parks, Forests, and Public Lands. I have to read this, sorry. And the National Park Service Office of Legislative and Congressional Affairs. He is now the superintendent at Bryce Canyon National Park. Won't you help me welcome Jim Ireland? Wow. I could never get the microphone. We have a little walk around with the speaker.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, all of you. It's really great to be back with all of you. This feels oddly formal. To just be, after 10 years, I just feel like we should be hanging out and just chatting, so we can do that. And I actually, you know, I was thinking about all the things I wanted to say, and they were all based on this being like 72 degrees and sunny outside. And any of you who know me know that when you give me a chance to get up and speak, I can speak. So I'll try to be brief. So I will pull out my notes, which are designed not to intimidate you, but only to keep me on track. And actually, what I'd like to do first is acknowledge that today, as we are here in this place, we are on the traditional homelands of the Ute, the Eastern Shoshone, the Goshute people, along with many other more ancient peoples whose names for themselves are lost to us today. We're just the most recent people to be in this place and to take our turn at its stewardship. And so I hope we leave an honorable legacy for those who come after us. And you may well be aware that remembering the homelands of native tribal peoples is something that we're trying to do more these days in the National Park Service with them, and we're encouraged to do that. That's not actually why I read it. It actually ties to this building and these exhibits as I get into that. I really want to thank all of you, every single one of you, first of all, just for coming out in the cold and being with us, and particularly to Shannon, to Cammie, to Cody, to Sheila and others, to Jim, and all of you who have had a part in this project. And many named and unnamed staff have been involved, and other people, contractors, partners, friends, have been involved in this project for over 30 years. I just happen to be the one standing at the end of the day who gets to stand here and say nice things. But I wish I could introduce you to the people, many of whom have spent part of their career on this and have long retired, in our regional office, the engineers, the contracting specialists, the assistants, the program analysts, the people who poured over the plans for accessibility or electrical engineering or you know, HVAC systems, the ones you'll never see. They don't get to show up and wear the cool hat out here, but they all had a part in helping this be done, so we appreciate it. And we're here to cut the ribbon and officially open the long-awaited Visitor Center, but I want to, we do that, it's not just about this building. It never has been, and it shouldn't be just about the building. It was Utah author and naturalist Wallace Stegner in 1983 who wrote that often repeated, somewhat overused phrase, national parks are the best idea we ever had, absolutely American, absolutely democratic. They reflect us at our best rather than at our worst. You've all heard that phrase before, probably? Yeah. So we can argue, and people have argued recently, whether parks actually deserve that title of best idea we've ever had. I mean, we've come up with a lot of really good ones over the last couple hundred years in this country. But let's take a look at the second part of that. Absolutely American, absolutely democratic. They reflect us at our best rather than our worst. And I would simply suggest to you that today, I don't know about you, but I noticed that our social fabric in this country, in our state, can be strained at times. And I would suggest that there are plenty of examples around, and if you don't believe me, just turn on any news channel tonight on your television, and you'll see examples of people sometimes being at their worst rather than their best right now. But for that reason, I think it's important to come to places like this and remind ourselves that places like Timpanogos Cave and other national parks and public lands truly are an example of us at our best. The story that I think you all should know, and if you don't, I'm going to repeat it, I'm going to summarize it for you. It bears repeating. As Jim mentioned, this is the 99th birthday, the 99th anniversary of the establishment by proclamation of Timpanogos Cave National Monument. It only took about 30 days for the local citizens here in Provo and American Fork, up in Salt Lake and elsewhere, to write to Washington back in 1922. After they learned that an active mining claim was being worked that included the caves that we see today. And you can go into Hansen Cave today and still see the wooden pegs in the wall that were used to drive into the cracks in the calcite and then soaked with water to expand and break off the calcite. The calcite, believed to be onyx, was a highly desirable stone for home decoration and buildings, fireplace mantles, tables, things like that. In fact, we believe that there is a fireplace mantle in the temple in Salt Lake City that is made of the stone from Timpanogos Cave. That it was a desirable building material and it was being mined. But the local citizens, the local population, rose up and stood up and said, no, this place is too important to be mined for private profit. It should be preserved for everyone in a public way. They wrote to the president in less than 30 days, as you heard, President Harding issued a proclamation to declare this a national monument. And I think that, 99 years ago, we came together and we agreed to set this aside. In this place, Utahns, Americans, Utahns, all of them in that case, put aside their private interests and came together in a common interest, in a common community good, above private profit and gain, and we're all better for it. We're sitting here today enjoying this beautiful place, a place which has been enjoyed by millions and millions of people over the last 99 years, by the way, because we came together. So whether you're one of the local hundreds of people who come to hike the trail every day, maybe some of you just came down from the trail this morning and you're standing here wondering why we're standing here under the tents, maybe you're not, or whether you make a once-in-a-lifetime trip to come see the caves and check it off your bucket list, you're the beneficiary of the foresight those people had and of their desire to do something in the common good. And that's something I think that's worth remembering these days as we struggle through a lot of other challenges in our society and how we can work together. So again, I don't need to reiterate this for the sake of the cold. Beginning of the centennial year, I think it might be helpful to have a quick recap of the geologic timeline of the park. So about 360 million years ago, the desert limestone began to form when this area was under the sea. And then on October 14th, 1922, they declared the national monument.
Nice.
You really thought I was going to use that. And then on June 6th, 1964, 42 years after the monument was created, in this spot, people like us stood and dedicated the new Mission 66 Visitor Center and Administrative Offices. Right over there where the red car and the silver truck are parked. A location later to be determined, by the way, to be in an area of extreme rockfall hazard. We found that out as we looked at the holes in the roof of the building. So that was in 1964. So that was 1964. 27 years later, on February 6, 1991, we lost that building to an accidental electrical fire after just 27 years of use. In 1991, that same year, we put in, as Jim mentioned, the temporary quote-unquote double-wide trailer, and it was intended to probably be there for about 2 years. It stayed in place for 28. I would note that's longer than the building it replaced. So the temporary building was used just longer than the Mission 66 building. That trailer was still in the Rockville Zone. As I say, you know, there are well-known stories here in this park of people coming into work in the morning and seeing a rock on the floor and wondering where it came from, and then looking up and seeing the hole in the roof. Because we realized that cliff face over there, as it sheds rocks from the upper layers, they fall, they bounce, they fell into the building, which is what drove us to redesign the entire parking lot and move the building over here out of the Rockville Zone. The result of a lot of geotechnical survey work with LiDAR by geohazard experts to basically move the building. So a lot of people ask us, why did you move it? And the reason was because this is a safer location. So instead, we wanted you to park your cars there. But that's why that 3-meter, that fence on that hillside is not just any chain link fence. The fence is an engineered geofence of similar type that you'll see on highway road cuts around the country, specifically designed and placed in that exact location at that specific height to catch the majority of rocks that come off the cliff. Notice I said the majority of rocks. So with the owner of the silver truck, the red So there you go. In June of 2019, we opened this new visitor contact station, and we delayed our ribbon cutting until the new exhibit package could be put in, as Jim mentioned, which was delayed by COVID. And as he said, I had the distinct honor of serving as the monument superintendent from July of 2011 to April of 2021. I've been gone about 6 months. Much of my work for 10 years, about a quarter of my career, revolved around this building and something related to it. And when I got here, I quickly realized that this was sort of an existential challenge for the park, this building. It was hard to move the park and the park staff towards, not that we didn't do other things, don't get me wrong, but it was really hard to get people thinking about the future, about improved visitor management, or cave protection, or science, or research, when so much of our time and energy was focused around this building. Every meeting, every conversation seemed to start with, well, someday when we get the new visitor center built. And I realized we weren't going to move this place forward in any other direction unless we actually moved the building forward. It was sort of like we were trapped. There were sort of 3 times. For those of you who've been here a long time, you might appreciate this. You know, there was a time when we used to live in this beautiful building. It was amazing and wonderful, and everyone was happy. And then the fire came. And then we were sort of trapped in this double-wide limbo. We're sort of living, and we were doing okay, and the maintenance crew and the park staff over the years did an amazing job of maintaining that old building. We added to it, we built a deck around it, we built additions onto it, they made it beautiful. They jacked up the frame every spring after the winter snows. Bent the frame so that we couldn't open the front doors. We beautifully jacked it up. Chet alone probably replaced all the plumbing in that building 3 or 4 times. So crawling underneath it. But, you know, we were thriving, but it was sort of this, we were surviving. There's a limbo. We never really survived. And then there was this imagined future day. Someday, when we would have, again, a beautiful, amazing building, and life would be good. And the sun would always shine. So I determined to do my best to move us out of the limbo and into the brave new world. Here we are. The sun's not shining. We didn't get everything we wanted, right? So not everything we wanted happened, and I'm just here to tell you that. So lessons learned from this thing. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? It's a great lesson we can take away from this building. I've received many compliments on the beauty of this building. The first day it was open, a visitor came up and said, "Finally, you have a building that looks like Zion." Excuse me, it fits nicely into the canyon. It's beautiful. The downside, any of you know who built your own home or been involved in a construction project, when you're involved in the weeds of a building like this for years, what you don't recognize what other people see. You don't say, "Wow, that's amazing, it's beautiful." You see every decision you made, and you question every decision you made. You know why that is that way, and you wonder if we should have done it differently and better. And believe me, there are things we should have done better here, starting with these rain gutters to the corner of the building that we didn't properly really look hard enough at the site distance or pull out the parking lot. It's hard to see up the road. Believe me, we made some mistakes. There's some things I do differently. But no project like this is possible without compromise and hard decisions. And I think we lose track of that today too. We suddenly expect everyone to do everything just right and everything to be perfect. And you know what? We're people. We did better. We do the best we can. It started out larger. The designs had a bigger exhibit area. It had a snack bar. The design I personally loved was the two-story building up into that hillside, where the roof of the building was a deck that would connect with the trail, so you could come into the building and then you could go upstairs and go out on the deck, and it would all be back over there, further away from the highway. That was a great building. We couldn't fit it on the architect's dreams. They gave it to us. We paid them a lot of money for that design, but it didn't fit on the space. And then accessibility concerns meant to have a two-story building, we needed an elevator, and an elevator cost several $100,000 more than we had. And frankly, there were huge budget constraints on this project. So the building would have been bigger, but every square foot we added to this building added a lot of money to this project. And so I just want to, that's just sort of the lessons and the reality is ultimately we do the best we can. And I tell you that because some of you are going to outlive me here and you're going to come along and say, "Well, I don't understand," or someone will come to you someday and say, "Well, I don't understand why they didn't do this or they didn't do that." I think we should give ourselves a little credit, and we should take credit for what we did, and people should understand that we worked with the best we had, and I hope that as you're in it today and as other people are in it, you'll enjoy it, you'll appreciate it for what it is. As I said, and Jim mentioned this too, unfortunately, we had new exhibits planned to go in as early as 2019, but COVID struck, and our exhibits were being produced in a fabrication factory in New Jersey, and they were stuck back there. Early in COVID, people couldn't travel, they couldn't come here, then we couldn't go there. So it took almost 2 years actually for the exhibits to go in, but they look great. And tremendous kudos to Cammie McKinney, our Chief of Visitor Services and Interpretation, who basically led that project for the last 2 years, as well as the designer. Back to my start, when I mentioned that we're on the native homelands of the Ute, the Shoshone, and the Goshute people, one of the things that I insisted with Cammie and the exhibit designers that was very important to me was that these exhibits include history of the native peoples who live in this canyon and have been in this canyon. They're still here today and have been in this canyon for over 15,000 years at least. And so when you go inside, I hope you'll see those. One of the things that's bothered me since the day I arrived is that for many, many years here is tradition in the park on every tour to tell the fictional story, The Legend of Timpanogos, written by Eugene Timp Roberts, a professor or teacher at BYU, who wrote this fictional sort of love story and legend about the heart of Timpanogos. And we would tell that to visitors, and older visitors today will still come back, and they're disappointed if they don't hear it, and they want to know about it. It bothered me that was the only sort of information and story we as the National Park Service were giving out about the native peoples and the tribal peoples whose homeland this is. And I've really tried for the last 10 years to get us to do better, to limit and put in context how and when we talk about that particular legend, which is again a fictionalized story, important to the history of this place because of how it was done and when it was done, but not a native legend and not the best representation of the native people. And instead we engaged with representatives from the Ute tribe and the Shoshone to help us craft. This is a very small exhibit space. It doesn't have a lot in it. It's not a big museum. but to better tell their story in their words in a way that helps people understand and respect them better than that legend that we used to tell. And so I'm particularly proud that that information's in there, and I hope when you go in, if you haven't already seen it, you'll appreciate that. Because we actually met with and talked with and brought over representatives of the tribes to help us with this. I think it's really important that we continue to do more and more of that. Hopefully it's the start of a new, more respectful and professional chapter in how we do things here in the park. So is it the bright new future? I'm going to leave that up to you as I conclude here. After the fire in '91, not only did we put in the double-wide trailer, we also revisited our entire general management plan for the park. And what we decided was that really we should move as many facilities as possible out of the canyon and out into the neighboring community outside the mouth of the canyon. This would be a parking lot with a trailhead and potentially a small contact station, essentially bathrooms and a place to pick up your ticket for your cave tour, not much else. And that the main visitor center facility would be located outside the canyon. And to that end, in 2000, Congress passed the Timpanogos Interagency Land Exchange Act, which authorized the Park Service and the Forest Service to work together on an interagency facility that would house our offices as well as a visitor center. The Forest Service acquired almost 38 acres of land in the community of Highland, and at a cost of, I want to say, at the end of the day when it's all done, I think about $7 million they spent on that land. So when you drive out of the canyon and you look south, just before you get to the stake center there, before you get to the first traffic light, where the grass and trees are on the south side of the road, that land is actually acquired, much of it, not all of it, but much of that land is actually U.S. Forest Service land for this interagency building. Those plans changed a lot over the years. That plan and that design has suffered through changes in leadership, changes in politics, politicians, designs, ideas, and it's never been finished. And it was my goal, if I were staying here and hadn't moved on to Bryce Canyon, that was going to be the next thing, to really sit down and work harder to move forward on that next step on that project. So I'm going to leave that to some of you who are sitting in front of me right now. It's going to be up to you because I'm moving to Garfield County, sorry. I've got my own issues down there. But that's still a vision, and this canyon isn't getting any quieter, and traffic is not getting any less. And so it's still a need down there. The vision was that would be a hub for, eventually, if there was alternative transportation, some sort of shuttle or van service, that could be a hub. It could have a community visitor center. The Park Service just finished the plans for a Forest Service building, and the Forest Service built the building. Or the Forest Service has the land. The Park Service gave them designs for a fire station and an administrative building. And now it's up to the agencies to take the next step. That was part of this project. I just wanted to point that out. Part of the reason this is a small contact station and not a big visitor center with an auditorium and a theater and whatnot was the vision was always that facility would be outside the canyon. Lots has changed over the last 15 or 20 years or even 30 years since we first had that vision, but that opportunity is still there for our community leaders, for our other agencies, for Park Service people to sort of pick up that ball and run with it. So these are hard decisions and they take a lot of compromise. There are a lot of compromises in building this building, budget compromises and planning compromises, and that's not any easier. In fact, it's harder. If that were an easy project, we would have done it already. There's a lot to it, but I'm gonna leave that up to you. I'll leave you with this. In 2013, we approved a new cave management plan here that significantly reduced the number of daily cave tour visitors. And it was not popular with some of you at the time. We were at our peak before 2013. There were days when we would take over 1,000 people a day through the cave, which was not healthy for the cave. And it was a real challenge for our facilities. When we changed our cave tour management plan, we cut that number down to a maximum of about 600, I want to say, a day. Somebody here could probably quote me the number, but we cut it down to about 600. And there was a lot of concern over that. It meant turning more people away. The pressure on our folks who worked the front desk in that trailer was tough because there were a lot more people who wanted tickets that we had to say, no, sorry, we're not selling as many tickets now. We limited the number of people on each tour. And we were worried about taking in less tour revenue because frankly, a lot of the park budget comes from the tickets we sell for the cave tour. But we persevered. We made that decision, and several years later, I think people had gotten used to the reservation system. They were happy not to get rid of that whole pattern we used to have where people would get here early in the morning and stand in line, and cars would be parked in the parking lot. Cars would be parked along the road and down the side of the highway waiting to get in. We increased our ticket prices slightly to offset some of the loss of revenue. And today, I think most of you who work here would agree that that system's working, pretty well today. It was a tough decision when we made it, but people have grown used to it, and I think it was a good management decision. I think they'll do it too if we adjust and do something different at the building out in Highland. But we have to have this sense of community, like people did 99 years ago. We have to see the bigger picture. We have to have a vision of working together in the common good. Sometimes we have to set aside our individual or personal or agency perspectives and work with each other in a way that we might not feel comfortable doing. We have to make some compromises like we did in this building, and we have to make some hard decisions sometimes. But at the end, even though not everybody is going to be 100% happy all the time, when we share that sense of community, we act for the common good, when we have a vision and we're willing to listen to each other, make tough decisions, we can accomplish great things, and we can enjoy the benefits for years to come. I hope this building, by the way, if you go back to that timeline, you notice we build a new visitor center here about every 30 years. We build it, we burn it down, we build it. So I hope I'm not going to see you all again in about 2050. I hope you'll take care of this one. I hope this is here for many, many years to come. Even though it was the product, it took a long time to build, and it took a lot of compromise. I hope that it's a treasure to you. I hope you'll enjoy it. I hope you think we've done a good job with it. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tim Roach, and we're going to move forward.
Thanks so much, Jim. Those are some great comments. Now on to the ribbon cutting. As Jim mentioned many times, the connections to the local community are profound here. Indeed, probably the closest I've seen of any national park unit with respect to the involvement of the local communities. And to that, we are honored to have a few members of that community here today. American Fork City Mayor Brad Frost, and Highland City Mayor Rod Mann. Thank you very much for being here. And to cut the ribbon, Jay Allen. It's truly my honor to have met Jay this morning. He is a legend. He served as a seasonal park ranger here for over 53 years. That's as long as I've been alive. And served as a mentor to many. His presence and influence will be felt here for quite a long time. So, the National Park Service is pleased to open the doors of this National Monument contact station. And we would like to thank the many NPS, National Park Service employees, volunteers, friends of Timpanogos Cave, Utah Department of Transportation, U.S. Forest Service, local native tribes who helped make this a reality. So as folks pass through these doors, I hope this enhances your connection to the canyon and the National Monument and serves as an inspiration for this and future generations. So Jay and Mayor Frost and Mayor Mann, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the door for the ribbon cutting. After the ribbon cutting, we'll invite all of you to come inside the contact station and take a look at the facility and the new exhibits. We do ask that you wear a mask inside. Otherwise, please help yourself to refreshments, donuts, and coffee here on the patio. Thank you for coming out today and under challenging circumstances. Thank you and travel safe.